Hi, I'm Shauna J. Cerniak, founder of Every Woman Empowered, and alongside are my co-hosts,
Johnny Gallardo, international artist, and Every Woman Empowered's resident artist.
And Neela Janu, certified laughter yoga instructor, founder of Let's Laugh Yig, and happiness ambassador for Every Woman Empowered.
Welcome to
Chit Chat!
And today on Chit Chat, we are very excited to have Audra Santa on our show. She's a musician, a mystic, and medial woman. Welcome, Audra, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. So excited to be here.
Thank you so much. Well, you know, we're very excited to have you in here because we're going to be talking today about where you were and where you are in life and what you are doing that are impacting and elevating Indigenous voices. And I'm just so excited to have you share a little bit about what you've done with the Gord Downie and Chani Winjack Fund and where that has stemmed to where you are now today. Could you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And really exciting to be here because usually I'm on the other side of this. You see, I've been doing the DWF live interviews, and that started with the pandemic started, and we moved our artist ambassador program online. I've had the honor of interviewing, I think it was 35 or 40 Indigenous artists, leaders, elders, mentors, people that came to share their stories. And you know, as a person with settler background, I was born in Thunder Bay. I'm now living in Toronto. I spent 10 years in Australia in between that. But I've been learning a lot about Indigenous communities, history, culture, traditions, and also more recently, as many people who, you know, call this land home, the land that we call Canada, have been learning. We've been learning more about colonization and the true history of what happened here. And my most recent project with the Gord Downie and Chani Winjack Fund was A Day to Listen. So if you were listening to the radio anywhere in Canada on June 30th, you would have heard interviews from Indigenous people who were telling their stories. And everybody has a story, but a lot of these stories haven't been heard in a lot of cases because Canada hasn't been in a place where they've been willing to listen. So A Day to Listen came together so quickly. We had 2 weeks. I did about 20 pieces, 20 interviews, focused on not only holding space for the stories, but on editing the stories, which was a real challenge because you take someone's very, you know, heartfelt story. In some cases, we spoke to some residential school survivors as well who told us their stories, and they trusted me with the story. And I had to carefully figure out how to bring that to radio and to be really considerate, not just of upholding the integrity of the story and the intention of the person sharing, but also being mindful of people who are listening, because it wasn't just non-Indigenous folks learning the history that Indigenous communities have talked about for a long time, right, but also the Indigenous people listening, making sure that they felt heard and honored, but also that there was, you know, sensitivity and content warnings where it was appropriate. Which I think is that balance, right? When we talk about truth and reconciliation, when truth comes forward, it can make some people uncomfortable. And we just have to make sure we're not doing any additional harm to those that have already been dealing with the impacts of colonization.
Wow. Well done. I was listening to a good chunk of the day, and to think that came together in 2 weeks, that's quite a feat. So pat on the back. And you mentioned the word reconciliation. It's coming up a lot recently, and I want to know, when did that word come into your life and what does it mean to you today?
It's a big word and it's a loaded word, and I think that there's a real danger that it is just a word. And at the Gord Downie and Chani Winjack Fund, they talk a lot about reconciliation, like what is the actual action or intention. You know, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Canada in 2015 was actually modeled off the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa. And the word reconciliation, you know, about us trying to make reparations to be able to heal from the past, We talk a lot about a journey toward reconciliation. Like, it's not a destination. It's not a checkbox. It's not just something where you're like, look, I'm doing reconciliation.
Exactly.
Like, for me as a non-Indigenous person in particular, I have to keep asking myself questions of like, what am I doing to contribute to reconciliation? What am I doing to continue learning? What am I doing to educate myself? And how am I helping to build stronger connections? And it's been a challenge. And ultimately, as we're talking about things like decolonization, some people don't even know what that really means. Like, when there's a land back movement, what does that really mean? And when we start understanding more that when we are extracting resources from the land, when there's a history of Indigenous children being taken from families, we have to go face to face with what that has really done in terms of impacting community, and making things right means we turn that around.
That's right.
And I get asked the question, and I no longer work in, the capacity I used to with the Gordani and Chani Wenjack Fund, but I'm still connected with them. But as I've been moving more full-time into my spiritual work, I still get asked a lot, like, what can I do? As a non-Indigenous person, what can I do? And sometimes when a story pulls at your heartstrings, it makes you want to jump in, like, try to find the first Indigenous person and tell them, like, I'm so sorry this has happened, what can I do? But it really starts here. It starts with us and with each individual person. A dear friend, well, someone I call a friend, and I look forward to meeting him face to face one day, Isaac Murdoch, or Bamgijik. He told a story on the radio, and for a day to listen. But he also told a story sometimes on his Facebook group or Facebook feed. And he was talking about how non-Indigenous folks come to him and say, what can I do? And he's like, oh, you don't have to fix the Indigenous people. We have amazing healers and leaders and teachers and scientists. We know what to do. He says, fix Canada. We need to fix Canada. So that's what I'm trying to do as a non-Indigenous person. And I believe that in doing so, there's a lot of actions. But for me, it starts with the heart, and it starts with the hearts that I can connect with. I'm going to tell a quick story. When I was in Australia, so actually before I was doing spiritual work in the capacity I am now, I was actually part of a Pentecostal church. And at the time I was preaching, I was a worship leader, I was, and I'd always say to people, if God's real, you shouldn't be afraid to ask questions. If this thing is truth, anything put in front of us, if this is truth, then there should be no fear of asking questions of the truth. And in that, I started to see things. So this is where the spirit was awakening in me. I had dreams, I had visions, I was praying for healing. I was seeing amazing things happen in this church. And one night I had a dream. And in the dream, there was so much division in the church. The youth had left the building, which is a real concern when that happens. No one listening. I was trying to lead music, but nobody was paying attention. And there was a man who walks up to me, and I swear, I believe he was an angel now. He walks up to me and he says, you really need to read 2 Corinthians 5. And I woke up and I grabbed my Bible. And in that scripture, it talks about the ministry of reconciliation. Now, this was the first time I heard this word, and it was long before we were talking about reconciliation in Canada. But the ministry of reconciliation was the idea about reconciling our relationships to each other, our relationships to the parts of ourselves, because there's parts of ourselves we don't like to look at. There's parts of ourselves we detach from, where we go, that's not part of what I want to do. Even there's things like soul retrieval or reconnecting with those parts again. And then it's reconciling with Creator. How do we reconnect our relationship with Creator? And then we go deeper. How do we reconnect and reconcile our relationship with the land? So my exposure to that word started there. And that was probably 15 years ago. And when that happened, I felt this call, and I felt this in my heart. And I held that like a life mission, the ministry of reconciliation. And then strangely, I ended up back in Canada. And then when the TRC, the final report and the calls to action, the TRC was in 2015, all of a sudden that word was at the forefront in my life again. And I was learning that I had a role to play to help perhaps Indigenous and non-Indigenous people walk toward reconciliation on that journey together. But also now that I'm going deeper into my spiritual work, it's like, again, how do we reconnect to the parts of ourselves, and how do we heal our relationship with Creator? Because when it starts there in our hearts, when we start to understand that that's going to shift things in the world, if we really had every person on Turtle Island connecting here again, how different of a place would we be living in? And then that's, you know, my desire. And I have to just say too, like, I'm still figuring it out. I don't have all the answers, but I think it's that's what helps me to keep asking the questions.
Wow, powerful.
And you're right. We have to keep asking the questions. So let's talk about intuition and spiritual connection, and where do we need to get get into reconciliation?
Well,
it's a deep one.
It is. I'm loving this so much. You know, I think that we're all born for something more, and we all have the opportunity to go deeper. Wherever we are, we have the opportunity to go deeper. And I always like to say we're either leaning into connection or away from it. And that's with ourselves. I'm either being curious and wanting to learn more about who I am, or about who my partner is, or about who you are. But, you know, the call would go for an hour and a half if we did that too much. But it's like, I want to learn, I want to grow, I want to lean in, or we sometimes lean away. And usually when we're leaning away, it's because there's fear, there's pain, there's trauma. Sometimes there's ego, or there's things there where it's like, I don't want to look at the thing, because when I look at that thing, then I'm going to have to face this part of myself that I don't really want to look at, because I like to think that I'm a good person but it takes something to reconcile in ourselves. Maybe I did something that wasn't something a good person would do. And that's kind of where Canada's at right now, right? We're coming to the truth as we're learning so much about the history, and we're learning more about the unmarked graves that have been talked about a long time. It's like, here's that truth. But we all have that inside of ourselves. We all have things we're not looking at. The thing that I'm learning, and I've started to learn to teach entirely from principle, not doctrine, I work with people from all spiritual backgrounds, from all faith traditions. I'm not here to shake anyone's faith. I'm here to strengthen it, but to actually help you develop a personal relationship, so that it's not like, here's what a book told me or someone else told me. It's like, where's my heart? And how do I hear for myself? How do I hear for myself from spirit? Because I believe we all can. So it is my belief that the Creator and spirit and all of our connection here, that there is an opportunity for us to lean into love. And that as we're leaning forward into connection, it's just like this expansive place where we experience joy. So like Neela could talk all about that. I mean, she's a laughter yoga instructor, a happiness ambassador, you know, even Jani, with all of your art behind you, you have Frida behind you, you are absolutely drenched in color. And that shows me a lot about the joy in your life, right? And there's something that we get to bring to other people when we bring parts of ourselves. So when I trust that spirit is kind and good, then I start to trust that those parts of my life can be illuminated. And maybe the things that I don't like so much, or things that I'm uncomfortable with, I can look at them with curiosity, because I know ultimately that I am loved and that I'm walking forward in love. And when we start connecting to the love inside of us and around us, then we can extend it to others. Because instead of trying to take and needing something from the people around us and going, I need you to validate how I feel. I need you to give me this. I need you to meet my codependency needs and all of that. When I come from real grounding and love of who I am and who I know I am in my relationship to spirit, to the land, to people, then I can offer the love. And then that's where I start to see the healing happen. So that's what I'm all about. That's what I've always desired, but I've been kind of gradually peeling back the layers so I can live there. Yeah.
You know, when you talk about love, That's where when we start to let love come forward and love prevail, then the racism drops, the judgment drops, the well, this has nothing to do with me drops. All those negativity that's out there starts to drop, and we instead bring in that love, and we go, okay, you know what? Yes, some of this stuff, the reconciliation, wasn't in my time, or I had no involvement with it, but I can instead have judgment and preconceived ideas and, well, this has nothing to do with me. Instead, look at it with a view of love and go, well, what can I do to change my attitude, my thoughts, my viewpoints on this? Why am I so angry and held? And I've witnessed that quite a bit, even with some very close people that I know. There's that wall that they're like, well, this has nothing to do with me. Well, no, it's not per se to do with you. You had maybe nothing to do with this, but it's about opening your mind, opening your heart, letting that love in, and help work towards a better Canada. And I think that would be an incredible place. And we can really truly say that what an incredible country would have if we all go together with that in mind. And I really want to thank you, Audra, for sharing today, because as you were speaking, I was getting little goosebumps, and it just warms my heart that, you know, I see someone like yourself being able to speak out these words and, you know, help the connection of the Indigenous people with the rest of Canada and work towards that same ultimate goal that we all want. So thank you very much for sharing that. That truly means a lot. Now,
I might just quickly say on that, you know, I'm still learning very much. I'm still growing, and I make mistakes on the way. And I think some people are afraid to speak or to share because they're afraid of getting it wrong.
Right.
And I had an elder recently, again, reinforce for me, when you do things in a good way, when you do things with a good and kind heart, then it's hard to get that wrong.
Right.
And I think that's where we start, is when we start with us. I think also I want to, you know, honor and validate the anger that is felt by Indigenous people and communities, because I think that, you know, as a non-Indigenous person, you might feel anger that has nothing to do with me, defensive. And I think there's an opportunity for us to be curious about why that's coming up. But when what has happened on this land has occurred to Indigenous communities, especially in regards to residential schools, you know, the land being taken, all of that, there's a right to be angry. And part of my responsibility as a non-Indigenous person is being able to hold space and listen. So yeah, I just wanted to note that.
Love it. Love it. And, you know, thank you for all the work that you've done, you know, in your previous endeavors. And now as you're going forward, the amount of hearts and people that you'll be touching. How can someone reach out to you to gain some information about yourself and to connect with you and work on their own intuitiveness?
Well, so I have a Facebook group I launched recently. If you look up Little Copper Lighthouse, you can find it. You can also, on Instagram, at Little Copper Lighthouse, I'm there. I do have a website, audrasanta.com, but it was mostly geared to my music, so I'm vamping that up again. However, because we're talking about love, I actually have a meditation, a free meditation called Awaken to Love that I created for another group a while ago, but I'd love to share if anyone's interested. Yeah. I will give you the link. We can put it in the notes below. People can click on it. It gives you the opportunity to download it. I think it's about a 30-minute meditation. And it's just like bathing in love. That was my intention, of just allowing us to feel surrounded by love. But yeah, you can find me on social media. I'm happy to chat. I'll also be doing some free masterclass sessions in the fall around developing your intuitive gifts. And if you join my Facebook group, I kind of start to do a lot of Facebook Lives, and we can talk more about all sorts of things.
Well, that's exciting. I know we're going to have quite a few people from from Every Woman in Power, Chit Chat, our viewers and such be signing up pretty darn quick, I'm sure. Thank you very much, Audra, for sharing today, you know, the powerful words of reconciliation and love and how we can go forward. And it's been a true delight to have you on the show. Thank you, and we'll keep in touch, and we'll probably have you back because I want to hear what's been going on and how well you're going to be doing in this business. So thank you so much. You take care.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye.
Thanks, Audra.
Thank you.
Take
Thank
care.
you.